Okay. So, welcome to the monthly Spark Talk. My name is Lisa Blue, and I'm a STEM H instructional specialist. And somebody clicked something on Zoom and it went away. There we go. In the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning here at Eastern Kentucky University. Through the Spark Talks, I hope to demystify generative artificial intelligence technology while sparking conversations that will lead to innovative teaching and learning strategies across the higher education landscape. So I'm very glad you're here today. Each month, our expert speakers provide insights and actionable strategies for the integration of GenAI into the classroom, thereby enriching your teaching methods, empowering our students, and encouraging its ethical use while preparing our students for a very tech-forward job market. We have 4 distinguished speakers today. Brittany Davis is an assistant university librarian for EKU Libraries. She received her master's in library science in 2018 from the University of Kentucky. She took her teaching librarian role at EKU in 2021, where she is focused on partnering with her STEM colleagues to incorporate information literacy components in key courses. Heather Beirne is a dedicated teaching librarian with 14 years of teaching experience. Currently serving as the Director of Teaching and Learning at EKU Libraries, Heather brings her passion for growth mindset, metacognition, critical reading, and ACRL framework-based information literacy pedagogy into the classroom. She is highly interested in faculty outreach and in developing meaningful reciprocal librarian-instructor partnerships that enrich student learning. Cindy Judd is a teaching and learning librarian for Eastern Kentucky University Libraries and has worked in the field of education for over 25 years, including the last 18 years at EKU. She manages the Learning Resources Center that provides a variety of services and diverse collections for the College of Education and Applied Human Sciences. She demonstrates her passion for teaching and student engagement through her information literacy instruction and the 2 undergraduate literature courses she teaches for education majors. She also served the university as a faculty innovator for 4 years. Trenia Napier assumed the role of Associate Director of Online Learning Strategies for EKU Libraries, Teaching and Learning in 2023. She has served in various roles within EKU Libraries for over 20 years, including 10 years helping lead EKU's Writing Center, whose mission included providing integrated support for writing, communication, and research. Trenia believes in teaching and learning are most effective when learner-centered and contextual, regardless of delivery format, and strives to create instructional experiences that encourage inquiry, facilitate exploration and discovery, and provide support for meaning making. So just a few of the many, many reasons why we treasure our librarians here at EKU. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you 4 very capable librarians.
All right. So thank you all for coming today. We're here to talk about developing AI-powered researchers. And we're going to talk about information literacy instruction and how to integrate generative AI. So we can skip past that. You heard all that. All right. Okay. So the workshop outcomes for today, as you saw in the blurb for our presentation, we're going to talk about integrating AI literacy into college information literacy. Key concepts we're going to cover: best practices to help students utilize text generators for research, thinking about prompt formulation, querying, output quality assessment, so searching and evaluating, which we're going to get to, partnering with your instruction librarians to design AI integrated learning experiences in information literacy, and thinking about active learning activities for AI interaction in information literacy.
Okay, so we want to start with a little poll. We thought this might be kind of fun. If you scan that QR code, use your phones and scan that. We want you to use all the emojis. Use an emoji to kind of express the emotions that you feel about AI. I didn't think about opening it up to see what other people, but if you guys can scan that and, just post an emoji about your feelings. And I'm watching this on, and as you can see, if you have the Padlet open, let's see, seeing a lot of thoughtful, like, what is that? Seeing a lot of those kinds of things. I love the eye roll. That's one of my favorite emojis, actually, is the eye roll. Yeah, like this sort of almost a little fear or a little like, oh my gosh, kind of feeling. A lot of I'm seeing some cheering and some yay, this is great stuff. I'm seeing a lot of that too. Let's see. I like the mix of emotions. Some of you put multiple emojis to kind of express, yeah, I'm feeling all the things about AI. I love the dumpster fire. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, thank you guys for participating. We know that I think, like many of you, we're feeling a mix of emotions, ranging from the excitement and the curiosity, versus sometimes the frustration and maybe just the uncertainty of it all, because it's changing so fast. So thank you guys for participating in that.
Okay, so now that we know a little bit about where you're coming from, we'd like to share about where we're coming from with this presentation and just kind of clarify expectations a little bit. So as Heather kind of alluded to earlier when she introduced, our focus today is about applying best practices in teaching information literacy based in ACRL's framework to AI integration in the research process. What we aren't going to talk about really, and what we're not interested in necessarily, is outsmarting AI. We are not interested in setting librarians up as academic integrity checkers, which is something that we get asked to do quite frequently, even before AI. So we sort of saw it coming. It's okay. We're not going to detect or eradicate AI. We're not really interested. We know that sometimes you might need to detect it, but we're not going to focus in on that today. And we're not really here to position ourselves as AI experts. We're really just learning like you are alongside you. And so on that note, kind of a shout out, and I'm actually see that he's here, so I'm glad that we gave him a little hat tip. But if you were in the session with Dr. Dom Ashby from EKU's English department recently, he kind of addressed his tone about ethical use of AI in this way. And we like that. We work a lot with his area. And so our tone in terms of our use here in the library with AI interaction with it is about recognize its permanence and setting students up for success in a world that is going to be AI heavy, regardless of how we feel about it, right? We want to show students that educators are learners just like they are, that we are learning AI alongside them. We are learning information literacy as the information ecosystem changes alongside them. And maybe most importantly, we want to demonstrate that we trust students, and we want to build transparency and open communication about AI with them. Brittany, you can go ahead there. So on that note, and kind of on the note of what librarians don't want to do in terms of AI detection, I was happy to see this article earlier this year in Inside Higher Education, in which professors are starting to kind of be cautious about tools that detect AI-generated writing. I'm still seeing a lot of conversation in social media groups that I'm in of people using them, and kind of having some interesting interactions with them. We've talked a lot about how AI works, right? How generative AI works, but I don't think that we talk a lot about how the AI detectors work. So let's think a little bit about that and what that might mean for our interaction with AI detectors. So much like AI, they are trained on both human and AI generated text. And they may provide wildly different results because each of them's training used with different data sets, right? But primarily they are looking at the unpredictability of content, because AI generated texts tend to have low perplexity while human writing has higher perplexity. They're looking at what, I think probably a favorite word for all of us in AI right now, they're looking at burstiness, right? So looking at the length and structure of sentences. And AI content tends to have less burstiness than human writing. So, less complexity, right? And all of this is based in large part on probabilities, much like AI generators. So what does that look like when we're actually looking at AI writing, right? The thing that a lot of AI generators are looking specifically at, they are looking for the repetition of words. They're looking for repetitive sentence structure, unnatural word usage, not work usage, as this typo on the screen. I'll blame it on AI. Generic or impersonal tone, contradictory statements, inconsistent verb use, and stiff, formal, or matter-of-fact writing style. I think we've all heard of the jokes about some of the language that AI is using. So again, what's the problem with that? One, we've got varying results between tools, right? You've heard a lot of instructors having to use 3 different tools to kind of come to some sort of conclusion about AI usage, and maybe not even getting that. And we're seeing inconsistent results from within the same tool. We've got high positive rates, and then here's where we get really troublesome, right? I think we've talked a lot about how we see a bit of bias and discrimination in a lot of AI generated content. Well, that falls true for AI detectors as well, because they are trained in much the same way. They are trained on very similar data sets from the internet, etc. So a lot of AI generators are disproportionately flagging text from minority groups. We are seeing studies in which non-native speakers, that up to half of the samples were falsely flagged as AI. We're seeing minority groups flagged at higher rates, substantially higher for Black American English and many AIs. And we are also seeing students with learning disabilities being tagged as false positives, much higher rates. It's reflecting the embedded biases in those algorithms rather than true detection of synthetic text very often. And I think if we think back to those things that the AI detectors are looking for in terms of simpler sentence structures, awkward word usage, we can see how different dialects and different cultures and backgrounds and experience with English can make minority groups writing perhaps falsely go in that way. So with those things in mind, I think we can go to the next. I'll trade off to the next, but I just wanted to set us up with this idea of knowing all of this. We can't ethically just rely on those AI detectors. We're going to have to rely on ourselves. But more importantly, I think we're going to have to teach students how to interact with AI and kind of embed ourselves and engage with AI alongside them.
Yeah, so to pick up off of what Trenia said, I think rather our purpose, one of our emphases today is going to be about kind of thinking about how you're crafting learning experiences related to information literacy and research, and how you can make those quote unquote AI proof rather than relying on those detectors, because we know a lot of where they might get used is when you might be grading research papers and things like that. So be thinking about kind of what we're saying and how this might help you think a little bit more critically about your assignments and what they might look like. So with that, I'm going to talk about information literacy and what it is. So again, in that vein of acceptance of the fact that AI is sticking around, it's our responsibility to teach students how to use it so they have these skills they need to effectively, efficiently, and ethically search out and evaluate information. We should think about how AI will fit in to those research skills. Just like, back in the early 2000s, the big panic was about Wikipedia. AI is another tool that sort of changes the information ecosystem, but it's part of what we can shift in terms of our practice to help students get there so that we don't do them a disservice by leaving it out of their education entirely. So information literacy, at its most basic definition. So you've heard us refer to the ACRL framework for information literacy. So ACRL is one of our professional organizations. It's the Association for College and Research Libraries. And they have an official definition that I won't read out loud. But basically it's critically thinking about information. So I often tell students that academic librarians' work is not really about books. It's about information. At our core, we are kind of professors of information literacy. If you're wondering why 4 librarians are here talking to you about this today, we are also we're kind of also practitioners in information provision and access. So we're concerned with all those things. And so one of the things I want to say to kick us off is that information literacy is a shared responsibility according to the framework between teaching librarians and class instructors and really all educators. I know there's librarians on the call, faculty members, other education practitioners. So we share information literacy, and that might look different depending on if you're teaching a gen ed course, what those research papers or research assignments might look like versus what they might look like in the discipline. And that might have some bearing on how you think about AI and information literacy. So whoever you are, whatever discipline though, you're going to be thinking about source credibility and how to search out those sources, just like we're already doing. And how can we use AI to do that? So next, please. Okay, so these are a few little points of the framework, kind of some of the things that we do when we're teaching information literacy. So we're teaching students to use a range of tools, different search tools, AI being one today that we're going to think about, and thinking about how search strategies might depend on that tool. Your strategy for searching in one database might be different than another versus might be different in Google or Google Scholar. AI, just another one. Evaluating information using various strategies to determine appropriateness, relevance, authority, all of those things we want students to think about. We think about what makes information good. And how it's good relative to your information need, right? Thinking about ethically using information to answer questions, solve problems, all that. And then develop critical understandings about the information environment in the ways that information is accessed, distributed, shared, and valued, as well as the ways of thinking and knowing shared amongst scholars. So searching and evaluating are kind of the concepts that we're going to focus on most in this presentation. And these are the ones that we teach most often. If you know, if you work with librarians in that a lot, you know, we do a lot of one-shot instruction sessions when we're doing face-to-face instruction. It looks like a lot of different things, but the two concepts we tend to focus are those two. Now the framework has 6 frames. You can go look those up if you want to. The AI fits into all of those frames. So one of my favorite ones that I won't talk too much about is information has value. And that is all about how information is a commodity within capitalism, among other things. And I think that you can kind of connect the dots as to where AI might have to do with that. So next slide. Okay, so the question here that we're going to think about is, with these definitions of information and literacy in mind, what are the intersections of AI and IL, information literacy? Do we need to significantly rethink how we conceive of or teach information literacy in light of AI? Spoiler alert, no, we do not. Critical thinking is critical thinking. So per one of the frames, information creation as a process, learners are developing their information literate abilities, accept the ambiguity surrounding the potential value of information creation expressed in emerging formats or modes, which to me is direct confirmation that ChatGPT and other AI models have a place in information literacy instruction, both for its use in research and with discussion with students about information in general. So again, we were thinking critically about information before ChatGPT came along. Large language models, like Wikipedia, are just another tool. So our job as teaching librarians and educators is to not shun that tool, but to embrace it and guide students toward using the tool responsibly and ethically. As with any new tools, we need to show our flexibility and adapt to these new tools as they become available. Okay. All right. Okay. So one more thing I will say here is that it's important that librarians and other education professionals, such as faculty, instructors, etc., not only work to incorporate it, but to continuously stay up to date as to how it's changing and being used. It even changes a lot from week to week. And so we have to be information literate. So AI can be used in ways that allow us to better teach the skills and concepts that we associate with IL, information literacy. And because of the role that AI tools play in various information creation and retrieval processes, understanding and being able to use AI tools is part of being information literate. Okay, so I got one more. So these are kind of the things we're going to focus on, and Cindy and Brittany are going to kind of show you a little bit of in practicality speaking, what do these things look like? So thinking about, and I'll do a little bit too, thinking about research questions and search terms, evaluation of sources, and then thinking about citations. All right, fantastic. So we've given you all a little bit of a good foundation here. We've talked about literacy and AI literacy and how that all kind of fits within the framework of, teaching information and evaluating what is in the student's hands. So now we're actually going to get to have a little fun with an AI tool itself. We're going to kind of take it for a little test drive here, okay? And the way we're going to do that is we're going to focus on one of the harder things, I think, for a lot of students coming in who have not done college level research. A lot of them struggle with, where do I even begin to research? What is a good, research question? How do I get the proper search terms? Because the databases don't search like Google searches. So there's all this like cognitive overload going on that really ChatGPT can help kind of level the playing field for them a little bit. So like I said, we're going to take a look at kind of playing with it today live. So what I want you all to do is just type into the chat some of the typical like research topics and questions that you're getting from students. That way we can kind of plug it into ChatGPT live, and we're going to see a way that a student could potentially use that to help get a better research question, and then even to get some good key terms out of that to help them when they're searching in the library databases. Right. Minimum wage one's a big one. Yep. Missing and murdered Indigenous women, autism and social skills is a big one. Mentoring on BIPOC students, absolutely. Okay. Sports betting, primary sources on the Haitian Revolution, challenges and strengths of the queer communities, police force and violence, all of this, yes, very common topics for college students. And they have kind of a main idea, but they don't know how to get it to that college level research, right? Social media misinformation, social media and mental health. Mental health's been a big thing lately with our students. I'm sure you all are seeing that too. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to take one from Miss Shirley O'Brien, fellow EKU employee here. I'm going to take autism and social skills and plug that into ChatGPT, okay? And part of the reason I'm taking that one in particular, is because a lot of times students will come to us with something very broad and just a general idea, and they really have to have help figuring out how to get that into an actual research question, right? So typically what a student's going to do is come in here and type something like they would in Google. How does autism affect social skills, right? And it's going to give them a little bit of a background, much like Wikipedia is going to do. Now you'll notice mine's going to look a little bit differently because I've been using ChatGPT long enough that it knows that I'm a librarian, so it's going to look just slightly different. Just want everybody to realize that it does keep your personal information, and there are pros and cons to that. So one way you can kind of have the students play with it is to let them get kind of that broad oversense. A lot of times we skip the background research aspect of getting into research questions, and this can also help the students with just getting a grasp on the thing that they're interested in, because most of the time it's just an interest, it's not an expertise. So once they've kind of got that, we're going to take a look at, okay, asking the AI, can you give me an example of, so we're going to look at both ends of a poorly constructed research question and a few suggestions how to make that question better.
Hey,
Now,
Britt, add question after research.
thank you. Perfect. Okay. And it will kind of tell you. So a poorly constructed research question. Now, here's the other caveat with ChatGPT. I didn't specify, right? So it's not going to give them one about their topic. So part of learning, just like we have to teach them searching the databases, you have to teach them how to talk to ChatGPT. It's not intuitive. This digital native tag that a lot of the Gen Zers get isn't exactly digitally native as what we would think of. I'm going to go back and reword this and put the actual research question in here. Okay. Copy and paste about autism, social skills, and try again. Okay. And you'll notice, interestingly enough, it gave me back almost exactly what I typed into it. And so that's going to kind of clue the student in on, oh, okay, that's just a good starter question. And then it's going to go through and look at, okay, maybe you want to look specifically about how social skills are developed in adolescence in Kentucky. And again, it knows where I'm from. It knows my IP address. So it's already picking up on that. So what challenges do individuals face with autism? It's going to give them a lot of different options here and say, okay, this is why it's better. This is kind of a way that you can focus in your research a little bit, right? Okay. Now, another way to kind of improve the students' results with this, because I think if we're not having these conversations about usage and how you can make it better, they are going to use it unethically, right? So part of our spiel is let's teach them how to use it as a tool. Okay. So ChatGPT likes when you give it context and specific instructions. So I'm going to get a little more specific and say, I am a freshman in college. I need to write a paper, a research paper about autism and social skills. You give me 5 examples of a good research question to start with. And again, what this is doing is kind of providing them a bigger picture and different ways to approach this kind of one thing that they have kind of an interest in, and is giving them avenues to explore. And it's letting them know, okay, this is probably something a researcher is going to be interested in, a scholar has looked at and has taken data on, right? So what roles do technology play in facilitating social interactions and skills in individuals with autism? And what are the drawbacks or challenges associated with that? How does culture influence the manifestation and the perception of social skills with people with autism? So it's getting them to that very scholarly way of thinking, which a lot of them are just not used to doing because they've never been asked to do it before. And it's helping them process, okay, this is why we're doing this, and this is how it's connecting with the research, with the class, and with the writing. Okay. So a little bit of context there really helped out. The other thing ChatGPT can do is it can take something that maybe is a little broad, but is getting closer to what they want. And it can make it a little more narrow. So if we're looking at, let's pick one of these here. So let's pick the one that's talking about sensory processing difficulties. So you can type this one in and say, can you make this research question a bit more narrow? And again, you always give it examples, instructions. Sometimes you can give it a role to play. And that helps with the input that you put in is really going to help you with the output. The better the input, the better the output's going to be. And it will tell you how this refined question focuses in on a specific age group, and how it may be a little bit better for research, right? Okay. So once they've kind of got a bigger, broader overview and they're getting to where their research question is starting to solidify, the next thing that ChatGPT can help with, because the next step is, we want them in the databases still. We want them to know that that information has value in that way. But again, the databases don't search like Google. That's how I start almost every instruction session I have, so that they know you can't just plug and play. It's very different. And so ChatGPT can help with this as well. So you can say, all right, I've got my research question. This is the one I want to look at. You can ask, help me brainstorm. Spelling matters. Help me brainstorm. Say, again, specifics helps as well. 15 keywords. Work. Library database. Help me find scholarly materials for this research question. Okay. And again, it likes those examples. It likes that repetition. Let's see what it gives back. Okay. So a lot of what ChatGPT will do will give them synonyms. It will give them different ways of thinking about keywords, and it will give them the words that the scholars and researchers and scientists are using that they just don't have the experience with. So a lot of times, you know, the example we use is everybody kind of basically knows what a heart attack is, right? But a scholar, a researcher is probably going to put myocardial infarction in. And unless you've really had a lot of experience in the field, you may not know that as a keyword. And so ChatGPT can kind of help them get there using this process of building that research question and building in, oh, okay, now that I know what I want, how can I ask for what I need out of the databases? And this is a good, again, this is a good starting place. It's a good way for them to get a holistic overall picture to help them feel more confident when they do get to where they have to find the scholarly materials. Okay. All right. So bear with me. Let me hop out of ChatGPT and back into our presentation. Okay. And ChatGPT is very useful for other things, like a lot of them struggle with, well, can you define what's a scholarly article? You know, can you look at a common research gap? It can do a lot of different things, but this I think will be really helpful, especially for the beginner researchers and writers to help get a better grasp on things. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to just kind of briefly talk about, I demoed a little bit of this when I was actually in the AI. So prompt engineering, I'm by no means an expert. We are by no means experts, but like I said, it does help to just kind of take a look at how you're talking to the AI. It mirrors the searching process in general. So, you know, when you're in the databases and you're looking for good research materials, you have to always kind of be thinking about how do you reformulate your search statements? How do you reformulate the keywords? And so prompt engineering is pretty much the same thing, but in the AI. So you have to give it a little context. You know, who am I? Well, I am a community college student writing this research paper. What's the context? Well, we've been discussing topics related to, insert topic here, social justice, autism. Some people are doing like serial killers or you know, Bigfoot, whatever the topic is, right? What's your goal? Well, my paper to make sure it hits on community college students, and I need, you know, a vast array of sources. And then what do you actually want the AI to do? What output do you need for it to help you? And so like I kind of did, please brainstorm 3 research paper idea topics, you know, give me 15 keywords, be specific in the way that you're talking with it. What I kind of like to think about when I'm playing around with the AI is, you know, at the bare minimum, you get clarity, context, and precision when you're talking with the AI. And that kind of helps you focus in on what you need to do. All right. So now that we've kind of laid the groundwork, we've actually played with the tool a little bit, I'm going to hand it over and we're going to talk about evaluating what the AI gives you. Because again, it is a tool. We are still the critical thinkers behind the machine. And so we're going to take a look at how you can do that.
Britt, would you go back to that first slide just for a second? So when we talk about source evaluation, we know that there are lots of different methods that librarians and others who are teaching information literacy and evaluating information and sources, other tools and strategies that they're using, including like the original CRAP test, as we call it, the acronym. But we want to focus on something that we feel like research and other current practicing librarians are finding is a more effective way to evaluate the sources that students are finding, especially on the web. So we want to focus for just a few minutes on the strategy of lateral reading. So lateral reading, in case some people are unfamiliar with it in terms of source evaluation, basically, it's the act of verifying what you're reading as you're reading it. You evaluate the credibility of a source and you by comparing it to other sources. Some people also call this tabbed reading. So when you're in a browser, you're on the web, you take the information you find in an online source, you open additional tabs in the browser to see what other sites and sources say about the source at which you're looking right then. So basically, you're putting together pieces of information from across the web to get a better picture of the site that you're investigating. Next slide, Britt. So unless you prompt an AI model to give you a source for the information it provides, you ask it a question almost like you would Google, unless you prompt it to give you a source, it's not going to. It's just basically going to give you the information. And even if it does give you a source, as many of us know, often the source is inaccurate, and sometimes it's giving you a source that has biased information. And while it's true that some AI models are less prone to what's known as hallucination, some of them are less prone to hallucination than others. Users should still apply the fact-checking strategies for AI-generated content. Next slide. So here's a sample activity that you could do in ChatGPT, Claude AI, other tools. Here's some sample ideas related to activities that you could sort of practice this lateral reading to evaluate sources that a tool like ChatGPT might be giving you, information that a tool like ChatGPT might be giving you. So when we talk about these AI tools with students, again, we need to remind students that they are getting this information, but they should still apply the lateral reading strategy to any content they find on an AI tool, just like they would when they find content on the web. So just because ChatGPT spits out some information and it sounds really smart and good and uses big words, that doesn't mean the information it's giving is automatically accurate. So those evaluation strategies still need to be applied. Google the information, see if they can find another source that can verify what was provided in the AI tool. Evaluate the source that's verifying the tool. Again, you have multiple tabs open, so you're verifying information across the web, not just in one source, but in multiple sources. Have them ask themselves if they can find other reputable sources that say the same thing. Next slide. And I'm not sure if it was Heather, Brittany, somebody pointed this out earlier, but we want to not neglect, sort of the obvious here about bias that is inevitably in a lot of the AI content. So there's lots of ways that content is influenced in AI, image and text generators. Bias can be found in data sets. When a data set is entered to be analyzed, there could be some bias built into that. It can be found in the way a query is worded by the user. It can be found in restricted queries entered by users who only want to see a certain gender. So if you think about forming the questions, like Britt said, when you're prompting the tool to give you information on a certain gender or certain race, even if that is data that you might need, that also feeds into what I call the brain, the AI brain. And so all of that is going in there and sort of teaching the tool how people are asking questions. So that also can influence the output. So what do we do? The next time we need to encourage, the next time that you see AI generated imagery or text, ask yourself, how representative is it of the broader population? Who stands to benefit from this representation? And likewise, if you're generating images yourself, consider potential biases when crafting your prompts, when you are creating images or when you're creating, generating content. Think about that prompt engineering, as Britt talked about. Otherwise, we as the inputters might be unintentionally reinforcing some of those same harmful stereotypes that society has been really working to try to unlearn for a long time. So next.
All right, so the third little corner of information literacy that we want to think about here is citation. So I briefly mentioned earlier the information has value frame as being something that kind of looks at information as a commodity. Well, kind of a branch of an offshoot of that is the idea of citation. And so thinking about who owns the information and ethically using that, working that into your own work, same as no different than what we're trying to teach students pre-AI. Students, information has value frame indicates that learners who are developing their information literacy skills need to learn the importance of giving credit to the original ideas of others through proper attribution and citation. And so as more people are using ChatGPT or some of the others for citation assistance, they need to be careful to verify the accuracy. So this kind of goes along with what Cindy was saying. Verify the accuracy and the existence of all citations. Again, ChatGPT does not always provide factual information, and it won't provide existing or good citations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean. So it might list articles with full citations, including DOIs. The articles appear to be related titles from reputable sounding journals. However, if you Google each of those articles, you will discover that some of them do not exist. It automatically generates them through predictive language modeling. It is also easy, like Cindy said, to have it spit out biased information based on how you generate your prompts. Like I saw something early on, I couldn't find it again, but early on in the AI shift, there was a meme that went around that somebody asked it to find scholarly sources on how straw is the best building material and it's better than brick. And it generated stuff that the titles supported that claim. Well, those don't exist. So right here, we've got a couple of examples. So on the one on the left here, there's a couple ways that it can behave, and it might depend on which tool you're using. It might tell you like, I can't really do that. You might try academic databases and you're like, okay, cool. So that's good. Another way it might behave is, unless you have some of the paid models, which again is a conversation about information has value, it may not provide access to the internet. So it might be truthful with you and be like, look, I can't do that. So again, it gives you some suggestions to use academic databases, use some keywords, narrow down your search in certain ways. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then finally, the one on the corner comes from Claude AI, which is my favorite one. And so I asked it to give me an example of a scholarly article, as I did with the others. And the bottom right corner, I did check on it and it does not exist. So, all right, next slide. Okay, so here's one more example. Here are 10 cited scholarly articles. So the report in question was actually written in 2009. So the link that it provides does not work. And the report actually isn't like a very good thing for a student to use because it doesn't actually mention artificial intelligence, Siri, or Google Assistant if you actually read it. Okay, next slide. So this article is interesting because it exists, but it was not written by these authors. We also asked it to find an article that cites another article, which is an interesting thing to think about having students do. But this actually, it's an article, it spits out an article that was published after the article that it says cites it. So something ain't right here. So if a student were to take this response, incorporate these citations into a paper or an assignment, they would include some non-existent articles. Students citing articles that they have not read is a problem that we notice all the time, but students citing fake articles that cannot be read compounds that problem. As students become creators of information themselves, they will need to accurately cite all the information they use, not only for the ethical and moral good, but also for the sake of their own reputations in their field. So ChatGPT is kind of a minefield when it comes to generating citation. I would also be wary of using it as a citation generator, though I have not tried to do that, but I would not trust to tell it like, here's an article, put this citation in APA format. I would not trust that. So I'm a big believer in leading students to build their own conclusions. So I think it means much more to them to be guided to discover something for themselves, about how it works, than to be told not to use it at all, because it generates fake citations. So an example of something that I might have them work through is I might ask ChatGPT to generate citations in an in-class exercise, or I might do that. And you can discuss that with the students by having them work the results into an assignment. Or you can help them kind of do lateral reading, like Cindy talked about. They can kind of think about how and why it might be behaving that way. And then it also is a good place to talk about the role of citation in the research process. So asking them bigger questions about what role do citations play? If an AI tool cannot provide citations, how valuable is that information provided to you? Can you trust that information? If the citations provided by an AI tool are not accurate or non-existent, how valuable is that? If a scholar incorporates those citations into their work, what harm does that do to the scholarly conversation? And then what are the potential consequences? And so that being said, there are some great discussion questions that you can use to guide student learning. And I think AI actually provides a really great opportunity for students to think about the reasons why they are being asked to cite their sources, why they have to use these kind of seeming to them tedious, seemingly arbitrary rule systems that are all different from each other. So as a basis for the citation discussion, ChatGPT can help students think about the bigger picture of why citation is important for good digital citizenship, ethical use of information, maintaining professionalism, and maintaining credibility.
Okay. So to kind of just give a broad overview here, because we've said we're not the experts here, and but that doesn't mean that we've not played with it, that we've not experimented with it, and that means you also do not have to be an expert to just get in and see what uses it can have. Where is it good, and where can it use a little more of that human cognition, that human brain checking things, kind of like we've mentioned. So we really like this quote from the AI Pedagogy Project. That's a really good website that we all kind of recently found. It's got a lot of good resources and lesson plans there. So we kind of approach it as, you approach conversations about AI in education with humility and a healthy skepticism. So yes, it's a tool. Yes, it can be used, but there are ways that the human has to kind of maneuver it in order to get the best out of it. So again, make some time to play around with it. Maybe you're not a big fan of ChatGPT, and that's okay. There's a bunch of different ones out there. Heather mentioned Claude. Google's got Gemini now. There's a lot of different ones doing different things, and not just the text ones. Some of them are generating images. So there's just a lot out there for you to explore and learn and have those conversations with your students about, you're always learning. The other thing a lot of us do are, looking at signing up for AI newsletters. A lot of them are on social media. AI Breakfast, Ethan Mollick, Nicole Henning are a few that we all kind of look at and keep up with to keep us kind of in the loop on things that are changing, because they are changing pretty rapidly. And again, just to model that very scholarly inquiry, curiosity, that like learning alongside students, as an educator, we, and as librarians particularly, we like to do the lifelong learning thing, right? You're constantly kind of trying to get better and learn more about things. And just aim for metacognition, talk about your thought process out loud, and just some open discussion and activities in your learning experiences with your students can really help just prepare them for the reality that AI is here to stay, and it is going to be a part of their workforce. Typically, depending on wherever they end up, it's going to have an aspect to it, and it's just going to be something they're going to have knowledge of.
I think this is me. So, we have about 10 minutes. We do have some slides that are going to provide some resources, but we wanted to just give a moment to see if anybody had any comments. I'm seeing some things in the chat about suggested resources, but please feel free to unmute and share your thoughts or have a question or post in the chat what you're thinking. I'm loving all of the resources and the links that you all are posting in the chat. Thank you so much. Yes, we will have the slides available. I know that Lisa or someone will follow up and make the links to this available.
Yes, I can share the recording, the slides, and I'm actually capturing all these links in the chat too.
Perfect.
Is there a library science AI resource tool?
Can you clarify what you mean by library science? That's a little broad.
I teach information gathering.
Okay.
And so it's one of the challenges is we can use it to find sources until the sources are made up. So I'm trying to figure out, I use classic library databases, teach how to use it, and a lot of library science processes. I was wondering, like, for information gathering, because I think these, like, everything from AI culinary on that site to AI chemistry sounds great. I just wondered if there was an AI library science.
Jenny, there are a lot of different librarians out there who are creating some guides on how to approach different AIs for information gathering, lateral reading, etc. And we'd be happy to hunt some of those up for you, and maybe even work with you to create one for us.
Yay,
for
Trenia,
EKU,
talk to me.
Right?
If you use tools, how do you discuss? I'm looking at some of these questions. Okay, so what are some other AI tools besides ChatGPT that we use, like Elicit, Consensus? I don't know if my colleagues have used. I have tried Elicit, played around with that a little bit. I'm trying to think. There's another one that I have dabbled in that's very similar to Elicit, but I have stuck primarily with with the ones through the browsers, trying the Bing, I'm trying to think, Research Rabbit, I think I've tried. Yeah, so there's a few out there. I have not dabbled too much in the ones that focus heavily into the research, but there's some good ones out there. I don't know, Heather, Trina, if any of you all, Britt.
I like SciSpace. And Cite was good, but I think they've put Cite behind a paywall fully now. So SciSpace is usually the one I use.
Kind of the same as Brittany. I've used the Elicit and some of those. I will say one of the things that is nice about those is that, clearly they're kind of providing some access to actual real scholarly, or at least access to the knowledge of them. But one of the things I've noticed in students' interaction with them is it really helps them kind of see that concept of the conversation of scholarship, the way that different researchers build off of other researchers, so they can kind of see those conversations taking place. And I think that's something that they don't see with a lot of other tools. It's something that they can't visualize it in a database, right? But a lot of those research focused tools are showing them those connections. There's I'll have to hunt it up, but there's one that does a lot of like concept style mapping with articles and showing those things in really interesting visual ways where students can actually see those connections.
Yeah.
And Britt, go ahead, Heather. Go ahead.
I was just going to answer another question. So you finish your thoughts.
Oh, no, I was going to say, to follow up a little bit on Jenny's question, if you want to go to the next slide.
Sure.
This is the beginning of several slides that have resources on them. So, I just wanted to kind of mention that because there could be some resources that we listed on here that might actually provide some of those examples. So I just wanted to didn't want to jump too far ahead, but go ahead, Heather, and take, you had a question you were going to take.
Yeah, so just the follow-up question from Claire, if you do use tools that find actual peer-reviewed research, how do you discuss with students the variety and quality of the peer-reviewed research? That's a really good question. And I don't know about everybody else. You all were just saying, I don't think we've really delved deeply into any of those tools. Brittany, I don't know if you have any insights, but that's a great question if anybody else has anything that they want to share in the chat.
Read the question again, Heather. Sorry, I can't see.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. So the question is, if you do use tools that find actual peer-reviewed research, like Elicit, how do you discuss with students the variety and quality of peer-reviewed research these tools generate?
Mm-hmm.
Good
I
question.
think it kind of goes back to what we were saying, like with Cindy, you still have to teach lateral reading,
Mhm.
no matter what the source is that you're looking at.
Right.
All the AIs make mistakes, and there is no ranking system that I'm aware of, at least in the research AI that I play with. So they're not saying, oh, this is the peer review, this is the best of the best, and this is just a review article. A lot of them are just pulling whatever they can kind of scrape. And so I think it's worth having a conversation about lateral reading, or using the SIFT method, or using some type of evaluation to pull out of the source you're looking at and look into an actual database, and look at, the about page for the journal that it's in. Look at, do those little things just to see, oh, okay, well, this one is a magazine. This one is, published in a scholarly journal, and just kind of having those conversations about what audience those are meant for and what purpose that information serves is still relevant, even when you use a research AI tool like that.
And I also think, looking a little bit here, I see what Claire has posted about open access sources. And I think, if students are using some of those tools to actually find scholarly sources, that's great. But how much of what they're finding is just picking from a very small container of resources, the rest of which are fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, hidden behind, again, those paywalls. They are paid for, libraries subscribe to them. So how much of what they're getting back in terms of results is actually casting a wide net. And so that is too where I think, especially when you're talking about upper level research, grad school, thinking about graduate research, you really have to think about the small, again, the little small pool of resources that AI is drawing from. And I say small, I understand relative to that, small, but there's still going to be resources that they're not going to find through an AI tool, that are only going to be available, or they're only going to access through a library database. And I'm not saying those are the only or even the best, but I think we need to acknowledge that to really do their due diligence in their research, they need to cast their nets wider and make sure they're using all of those tools. Let's see, how concerned is the community that research resources will be loaded by students into AI to generate a summary, or in the case of Notebook LM, query the article? I mean, I think this goes back to, those conversations that we as educators, were all having about, how much we're feeding the brain, what I call AI, I call it the brain, what are we feeding it? How much student generated content are we putting in there for the sake of quote unquote AI detection? And how much content are we putting in there that is, that we may not ought to put in there? Yeah, this is a bigger question. I think there's a lot of conversation in, a lot of conversations about that. I definitely don't have the answer. I don't know if my colleagues want to talk about that.
Well, we don't want to go too far past time. We could talk about this for a while.
Absolutely. We've covered most of the questions. I've got one last one though. I'm curious about how many of your institutions support their faculty, staff, and students to use ChatGPT-4. The paid version offers more reliable citations and has addressed many issues found in ChatGPT 3.5, such as hallucinations. So I think that's a round robin for anyone who wants to chime in. I know personally, I've advised students to get around this by using Copilot in Creative, or what's the other mode? Not Balanced. Balanced is 3.5, but the two extremes kick you back into 4 and gives you actual hyperlinks. All right.
I do wonder, Lisa, how long we're going to see those levels of kind of free access to the higher levels. This is, as with many technologies and communities, I think we're seeing these slowly push off into paid versions. And
I
when we have
agree.
a conversation about the more research focused ones that are giving access to scholarly peer reviewed material, it's already a lot of open access. And I think that just knowing as a librarian what I know about big vendors like Elsevier and EBSCO, they're going to push for less and less access. So I think we'll see things changing a lot, even as we're recommending these workarounds.
Agreed. Well, thank you all so much. This was a fantastic presentation, as I knew it would be, because you guys are my amazing librarians. So this concludes our Spark Talk for today. A link to the recording, the slides, a collection of the links shared, and a short survey will be sent out by the end of this week. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me directly. I've probably emailed and pestered every single one of you that have joined today at one point or another. And if not, I will email you by the end of the week. So this is Lisa Blue at EKU signing off. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.